I always thought that if my boyfriend ever cheated on me, I would know. I'd feel it in my gut. I'd see the red flags, the late night disappearances, the sudden change in behavior. But I didn't. Or rather, I did, but I ignored them. Because every time I had a doubt, every time something didn't feel right, my brother and sister told me I was overreacting, that I was being paranoid, that I was just insecure. And I believed them. I believed them because they were my family, because they were supposed to protect me. But they didn't. They protected him. And for over a year, I lived in a lie that they helped build. I met Jake when I was 19. He was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, confident, the kind of guy who could make you feel like the only person in the room when he looked at you. My brother Ethan was the one who introduced us. They played basketball together, hung out on weekends. If Ethan vouched for him, why would I question it? And my sister Chloe was quick to say how cute we looked together, how lucky I was. It felt like I was stepping into a fairy tale, one that my own family approved of. At first, things were perfect. Late night drives, spontaneous road trips, lazy Sundays spent tangled in each other's arms. But then the little things started, canceled dates, unanswered texts, the way he'd get defensive over the smallest questions. Why didn't you pick up last night? I fell asleep. Who's that girl commenting on your posts? Just a friend, stop being crazy. And every time doubt crept in, I'd run to my siblings. Chloe would roll her eyes. Lauren, you're being ridiculous. Guys need space. Ethan would shake his head. Jake's a good dude. You're just looking for problems. And so I swallowed my doubts. Then came the night of my 20th birthday. Jake was distant the whole evening, glued to his phone, stepping outside to take calls. When I finally confronted him, he flipped it on me. God, Lauren, do you ever just relax? Why do you always have to make a scene? I felt humiliated, standing there in my birthday dress, my makeup perfect, my smile forced. When I cried to Chloe later, she sighed. You can be a little intense sometimes. Maybe just let things go? So I did. For months, I ignored the feeling in my chest, the one that whispered something was wrong. I ignored the late-night excuses, the unfamiliar perfume on his jacket, the way he suddenly started showering before seeing me instead of after. I ignored it all because I trusted the people around me, because if my own brother and sister, the two people who had known me my whole life, said I was imagining things, then maybe I was. But then, everything changed with one conversation. It was a regular evening. Ethan and I were hanging out at his place, watching some mindless show on Netflix. Out of nowhere, he said it. You know, Jake wasn't exactly faithful to you. At first, I laughed, waiting for the punchline. But Ethan wasn't laughing. He wasn't even looking at me. Well, hi, I asked, my voice quieter. Ethan sighed like this was something minor, like he was telling me I had a stain on my shirt. I mean, yeah, he cheated a bunch of times. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I might throw up. What do you mean a bunch of times? Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. 7, I think? Maybe more? 7 times. And I was supposed to process that like it was nothing. I stood up so fast the remote fell off my lap. You knew? My voice cracked, my vision blurred at the edges. You knew and didn't tell me? He finally looked at me, and for the first time I saw it, the guilt, the hesitation, the knowledge that what he did, what they both did, was unforgivable. We didn't want to hurt you, Lauren. I let out a hollow laugh. You didn't want to hurt me, so instead you let me stay with him? Let me believe I was crazy? Let me doubt myself for over a year? My hands were shaking, my whole body was shaking. And Chloe? She knew too? Ethan swallowed hard. Yeah, we both did. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. The room was spinning, the walls closing in. My own family, the people I trusted most. The ones who were supposed to have my back. They had been lying to me all along. I grabbed my coat and ran out the door, Ethan calling my name behind me. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop, because if I did, I might fall apart completely. As I stepped into the cold night air, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't just about Jake anymore. This was war. I drove around for hours that night, the street lights blurring into streaks of yellow and white. My phone buzzed over and over. Ethan, Chloe, even Jake. I ignored them all. My mind couldn't wrap around the weight of it. 7 times. 7 different girls, and my own brother and sister had known. Every time I had cried to them, every time I had begged for reassurance, every time I had lain awake at night wondering if I was losing my mind, they had known. They had looked me in the eye and told me I was imagining things. At some point, I ended up at a 24-hour diner, sitting in a red vinyl booth with a cup of coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. The smell of greasy food and burnt espresso filled the air, but all I could focus on was the pounding in my chest. How long had they known? Had they talked about it behind my back, exchanging glances while I rambled on about Jake? Did they ever plan to tell me, or was this just a slip-up on Ethan's part? The questions spun in my head until I thought I might scream. The moment the sun started creeping over the horizon, I drove home. My hands were clenched so tightly around the steering wheel that my knuckles were white. I wasn't even sure what I was going to do. I just knew I needed answers. Chloe was already awake when I walked in. She was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee like it was any other morning. When she saw me, her face shifted. Guilt flickered across it, but she masked it quickly with forced nonchalance. "Lauren," she said, setting her mug down, "Ethan told me you were upset." I stared at her, rage building in my chest. "Upset? That's what we're calling it?" She sighed, rubbing her temple like I was some exhausting problem she had to deal with before breakfast. "Look, I get why you're mad, but we were trying to protect you." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Protect me? By letting me stay in a relationship with a serial cheater? By making me think I was crazy every time I suspected something? Chloe exhaled sharply. "It wasn't that simple, Lauren. What were we supposed to do? Tell you and watch you fall apart? You were in love with him." The words hit me like a slap. I stepped closer, gripping the back of a chair to keep myself steady. "So instead, you let me live a lie? Let me keep loving someone who didn't deserve it? How does that make any sense?" She looked away, running a hand through her hair. "It wasn't my place." "Not your place," my voice rose. "You're my sister, Chloe. Ethan is my brother. If it wasn't your place, then whose was it?" She had no answer for that. Instead, she shook her head, her expression hardening. "We didn't want to see you hurt, okay?" "Well, congratulations," I snapped, "because now I'm more hurt than I've ever been in my life." Before she could say anything else, I turned and walked out. I couldn't stand to look at her. But I wasn't done, not even close. I drove straight to Ethan's apartment, and when he opened the door, he looked like he hadn't slept either. "Lauren?"
Why?
I cut him off, stepping inside. "Just tell me why." Ethan sighed, closing the door behind me. "I told you, we didn't want to hurt you." I shook my head. "No, that's not good enough. I need the truth, Ethan. How long have you known?" He hesitated, then sat down on the couch, rubbing his hands together. "A little over a year." A year. They had known for a year and said nothing. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who was the first?" He looked down. "I don't know her name, some girl he met at a party." I scoffed. "Of course. And the others?" Ethan hesitated again. That's when I knew he wasn't telling me everything. "What?" I demanded. "Just say it." He exhaled. "One of them was Chloe's friend." It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "Chloe's friend?" He nodded. "Yeah, that's part of why she didn't want to tell you. She didn't want you to know." A wave of nausea rolled over me. I stumbled back, shaking my head. "You mean to tell me that not only did she know, but she covered for one of her friends? She let me sit across from that girl, probably talk to her, completely unaware?" Ethan looked miserable. "I'm sorry, Lauren, I really am." I wanted to scream, to break something, to make them feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. My own sister had chosen loyalty to a friend over me. My own brother had kept his mouth shut out of convenience. And Jake had played me for a fool while everyone watched. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think through the rage. "Does Jake know you told me?" Ethan shook his head. "Not yet." Good. He frowned. "Lauren, what are you?" "I'm gonna make sure he regrets ever thinking he could do this to me." Ethan's eyes widened. "Look, I get that you're angry." "Ooh, you have no idea," I cut him off. "But don't worry, Ethan, I won't be the only one hurting when this is over." I turned and walked out, my mind already forming a plan. Jake thought he had won. He thought he had gotten away with it. But he had no idea what was coming. I didn't sleep that night. My mind wouldn't let me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. Jake, Ethan, Chloe. I heard their voices, their excuses, their pathetic justifications for why they had betrayed me. A whole year. They had all let me walk around blindly loving a man who had humiliated me over and over again. And the worst part? They hadn't just hidden the truth. They had actively worked against me, gaslighting me into believing I was crazy every time I suspected something. But now I knew the truth, and that meant one thing: I had power. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open, my phone buzzing every few minutes with messages I ignored. Chloe had texted 3 times. Ethan had called twice. I knew they were panicking, worried about what I might do. Good. They should be. I started with Jake. If he had cheated on me 7 times, there had to be proof. Nobody gets away with that much betrayal without leaving something behind. I went through his old social media posts, scrolling back months, looking for anything suspicious. A like on a random girl's picture, a comment that felt too friendly. A night he had claimed to be stuck late at work but had been tagged in someone's story at a party. I wrote down every name I didn't recognize, every unfamiliar username, and cross-referenced them with people he followed. Then I moved to my texts. I hadn't spoken to Jake's friends much, but I knew some of their girlfriends. I sent out a few carefully worded messages. Hey, I know this is random, but I just found out Jake was cheating on me, and I think some of it happened at parties. Do you remember anything weird from the last year? It didn't take long for replies to start coming in. One girl, Olivia, responded almost immediately. OMG, I always thought something was off. I never wanted to say anything, but I saw him leave with a girl at some bar once. I thought maybe it wasn't what it looked like, but now... Another girl, Sarah, texted. I didn't see anything, but my friend hooked up with a guy she later found out had a GF. I bet it was him, let me ask her. The information trickled in, piece by piece, confirming what I already knew. Jake had been sloppy. He had left traces, even if nobody had put the pieces together at the time. But the real jackpot came when Sarah sent another message. It was him. My friend gave me screenshots of their DMs. Want me to send them? I almost dropped my phone. Yes, please. A few seconds later, my screen lit up with proof. Jake flirting, making plans to meet up, asking a girl when her roommate would be gone so they could have some fun. It was all there. And the timestamp? Right in the middle of the time we were together. I sat back, my heart pounding. I had him. But I wasn't done yet. If Chloe had covered for one of her friends, that meant she wasn't just passively ignoring the situation, she had actively protected someone who had been sleeping with my boyfriend. That was a different level of betrayal, and I needed to know why. I called her, she picked up on the second ring. Lauren. What's her name? I didn't bother with pleasantries, I didn't have the patience for them. Chloe went silent. I gripped the phone tighter. Don't even try to lie to me, Chloe. I know one of your friends was with him. Who was it? She sighed. It's not what you think. I cut her off. Was it Maddie? More silence. That was all the answer I needed. Maddie had been Chloe's best friend since college. She had always been around, always smiling in my face, always acting like she cared about me, and all this time, she had been sleeping with my boyfriend. You disgust me, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Lauren, please, Chloe tried. I didn't tell you because I knew it would hurt you. I didn't know what to do. You could have chosen me, I snapped. You could have warned me. You could have told your so-called best friend to stay the hell away from my boyfriend, but instead, you let her keep doing it, over and over again. She told me it was a mistake, Chloe said weakly. I laughed bitterly. Yeah? 7 mistakes? Chloe had nothing to say to that. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Don't ever speak to me again. You made your choice, and I'm making mine. I hung up before she could reply. I felt sick, but I wasn't done yet. Now, I had everything I needed. I had names, I had screenshots, I had the whole damn story laid out in front of me. Jake thought he was untouchable, that he had gotten away with it all. That was about to change. Because now I had a plan. I spent the next 2 days putting everything together. Every screenshot, every message, every piece of proof that showed exactly who Jake was and what he had done. I didn't just want to confront him, I wanted to make sure he had nowhere to hide. He had spent the last year humiliating me, lying to me, making me doubt myself while he ran around behind my back. Now it was my turn to take control. I waited until Friday night when I knew exactly where he would be. Jake had a habit, he always went to the same bar with his friends after work, a routine I had stupidly thought was just harmless fun. Now, I knew better. This was the place where half of his affairs had probably started, where he had flirted with strangers while I was at home thinking he was just blowing off steam. I walked in, heart pounding but expression calm. The bar was packed, dimly lit with music pulsing through the air. It didn't take long to spot him sitting at a booth with his friends, beer in hand, laughing like he didn't have a care in the world. The second his eyes landed on me, his smile faltered. "Lauren," he said, looking confused, "what are you doing here?" I smiled, but it wasn't the kind he was used to. It wasn't soft or loving. It was the kind of smile you give right before you destroy someone. "Just thought I'd drop by," I said lightly. "You know, say hi. Oh, and also, expose you as the lying, cheating piece of garbage you are." The table went silent. His friends exchanged awkward glances, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Jake let out a forced laugh. "Lauren, come on, let's not do this here." "Oh, I think here is perfect," I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket. I turned the screen to face him, scrolling through the evidence I had gathered, the messages, the photos, the timestamps. "Recognize these? Because I sure as hell didn't. Not until a few days ago. 7 different girls, Jake. 7. His face drained of color. "Lauren, let's talk about this in private." I tilted my head. "Oh, you want privacy now? That's funny, because you didn't seem to care about privacy when you were sneaking around behind my back." I turned my attention to his friends. "Did you guys know?" I asked, scanning their faces. Some of them looked uncomfortable, others quickly shook their heads. "Wow," I said, my voice dripping with mock admiration. "Looks like you're just as much of a snake to them as you were to me. Guess lying is just a full-time job for you, huh?" One of his friends, Matt, cleared his throat. "Lauren, none of us knew, I swear." "Well," I said, locking eyes with Jake, "they know now." Jake was clenching his jaw so hard I thought his teeth might crack. "You made your point," he said through gritted teeth. I laughed. "Oh, I haven't even started." I turned, pulling up my next move. A perfectly crafted message, complete with every screenshot attached, ready to send. The recipient? Every single person in Jake's life. His coworkers, his boss, his family. I had made sure to include the ones he respected the most, the ones whose opinions actually mattered to him. Jake's eyes widened in panic as I held up my phone. "Lauren, you don't get to tell me what to do anymore," I said, hitting send. The moment the message was delivered, his phone buzzed violently on the table. One by one, his friends pulled out their own phones, their faces morphing into a mixture of shock, disgust, and quiet amusement. Jake grabbed his phone, staring at the screen like he could will it all away. "You're insane," he hissed. I leaned in, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "No, Jake. I'm just done playing nice." I turned and walked away, pushing through the bar doors and stepping out into the cool night air. My heart was still racing, but it wasn't from fear anymore, it was from relief. Jake had spent a year thinking he had control over me, thinking I was just some girl who would always believe his lies. But now, he had nothing, his reputation ruined, his carefully crafted image shattered, and the best part? This was just the beginning. I didn't stop with Jake. Humiliating him in front of his friends and sending out the proof of his cheating was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. He wasn't the only one who had betrayed me. Ethan and Chloe had played their own roles in this mess, and they had gotten away with it for far too long. It was time they faced the consequences of their choices, just like Jake had. Chloe was first. She had tried calling me at least a dozen times since our last conversation, leaving voicemails that ranged from defensive to downright desperate. I hadn't answered a single one, but now I was ready to talk, on my terms. I knew exactly where to find her. She had a standing Sunday brunch with her group of friends, the same group that included Maddie, the girl she had covered for while she slept with my boyfriend. The moment I stepped into the cafe, I saw them, sitting at their usual table near the window, laughing over mimosas like nothing was wrong. The laughter stopped the second they saw me. Chloe's face paled and Maddie quickly looked away, pretending to be focused on stirring her drink. The others just glanced between us, sensing the tension but clearly unsure of what was about to happen. I walked up to the table, my expression calm but my voice sharp. "So which one of you knew?" Chloe swallowed hard. "Lauren, can we not do this here?" I ignored her and turned to Maddie. "You, how long were you sleeping with him?" Maddie finally looked up, her face a mask of guilt and defiance. "Lauren, Save it," I snapped. "I don't need your fake apologies, I just want to know how long." She hesitated, then muttered, 6 months. 6 months, half a year of sitting across from me, smiling in my face, acting like we were friends, while she was sneaking around with my boyfriend. I nodded slowly. "Right, and you," I said, turning back to Chloe, "knew the entire time." Chloe shifted uncomfortably. "I told you." "No, I don't want your excuses," I cut her off. "I want you to understand something. You're dead to me, Chloe. You made your choice and now you can live with it." The other girls at the table watched in stunned silence as I turned back to Maddie. "And you? I hope whatever disgusting little affair you had with Jake was worth it, because now everyone here knows exactly the kind of person you are." Maddie's face flushed red and I could already hear the murmurs from the others. Girls like her, girls who betrayed their friends, never stayed in their social circles for long. I had just made sure of it. Without waiting for a response, I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving Chloe and Maddie to deal with the fallout. Ethan was next. Unlike Chloe, he hadn't been blowing up my phone. I figured he was hoping I'd just cool off and let it go, the same way I had let things go in the past. He had underestimated me. I drove to his apartment that evening, knowing he'd be home. He was too much of a routine guy to be anywhere else on a Sunday night. Sure enough, when I knocked on his door, he answered within seconds, looking surprised but not entirely shocked to see me. "Lauren," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "I figured you'd come by eventually." I walked past him into the living room and turned to face him. "You figured right." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I know you're pissed. I get it." "No," I said coldly. "You don't get it. You don't get what it feels like to realize that the people who were supposed to have your back were actually helping someone else stab you in it." He looked genuinely regretful, but it wasn't enough. Not even close. "I didn't think it was my place to—" "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't stand there and act like you were just some neutral party in all of this. You actively covered for Jake. You made me doubt myself every time I had suspicions. You let me walk around for over a year thinking I was crazy when you knew the truth the entire time." Ethan exhaled heavily, leaning against the wall. "I thought I was protecting you." I laughed bitterly. "By letting me waste my time on a guy who was cheating on me with multiple women? That's not protection, Ethan. That's betrayal." He didn't have an answer for that. I took a step closer, my voice steady. "You're my brother. You were supposed to be on my side, but you weren't. And because of that, you don't get to be part of my life anymore." His eyes widened slightly. "Lauren, come on. You don't mean that." "I do," I said firmly. "I'm done with people who don't respect me enough to be honest with me. That includes you." He opened his mouth to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned and walked to the door, pausing just before stepping out. "Oh, and by the way," I added, glancing back at him, "your girlfriend, she's going to find out exactly the kind of person you are." Ethan's face went pale. "Lauren, don't." I smirked, too late. With that, I walked out, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. For the first time in a long time, I was free. I expected to feel empty after everything was done, after Jake had been exposed, after Chloe had been humiliated in front of her friends, after Ethan had finally been forced to face the consequences of his choices. I had spent so long carrying the weight of their betrayal that I thought once I dropped it there would be nothing left, just a hollow space where my trust used to be. But I didn't feel empty. I felt powerful. In the days that followed, the fallout spread like wildfire. Jake lost his job. Apparently one of his coworkers had received my message and it had made its way to his boss. Turns out some of the women he had been with were people from work, and that kind of behavior wasn't something the company wanted associated with them. Chloe's social circle turned against her. She had always played the role of the confident, put-together one, the girl everyone admired. But now, people saw her for who she really was, someone who could throw her own sister under the bus just to keep up appearances. Ethan's life didn't stay intact either. His girlfriend dumped him the second she found out he had helped cover up Jake's cheating. It turned out she had her own suspicions about Ethan's honesty, and my revelations were enough to make her realize she didn't want to stick around. I should have felt guilty for how perfectly everything had fallen apart for them, but I didn't. They had built their lives on lies, and all I had done was hold up a mirror. The destruction was their own doing. But just because I had exposed them didn't mean I was done. Winning wasn't just about tearing them down, it was about building myself back up. The first thing I did was move. I needed to get away from the place that still smelled like Jake, from the walls that had absorbed the nights I had spent crying, from the memories of all the times I had doubted myself while everyone else let me suffer in silence. I found a new apartment, small but perfect, with big windows that let in the light, making the space feel open and free. It was mine, untouched by the past, a place where I could finally breathe. I threw myself into my work, taking on projects that challenged me, that made me feel like I was in control of something again. I started working out, not because I wanted to change myself, but because I wanted to feel strong, to remind myself every day that I was capable of more than just surviving. And I surrounded myself with people who actually cared about me, friends who had never doubted me, who had supported me even when I was too blinded by love to see what was right in front of me. One night, weeks after everything had gone down, I was sitting in my new apartment, sipping wine and scrolling through my phone when a notification popped up. Jake. It was the first time he had tried to contact me since I had exposed him, and for a moment I just stared at his name, waiting for some kind of reaction to hit me. Anger, sadness, regret, but there was nothing. Just a quiet, detached curiosity. I opened the message. He wanted to talk. He said he just needed one conversation, one chance to explain himself. I almost laughed. There was nothing he could say that would change anything, no justification that would erase what he had done. But I responded anyway, asking him what he wanted. He said he wanted to meet, just once. I knew what he was doing. He thought if he could see me in person, if he could use that voice, that charm, that look that had always made me weak, he could fix things. He could rewrite the story, turn himself into the victim, make me believe that what he had done wasn't that bad. I told him there was nothing left to say. He told me he missed me. I stared at those words for a long time, waiting for them to mean something, waiting for that familiar ache to return. But all I felt was exhaustion. He missed me. Of course he did. He missed the version of me who trusted him, who believed in him, who forgave him without hesitation. He missed the girl who let herself be lied to because the truth hurt too much. That girl was gone. I told him he would have to learn to live with that and blocked his number. As I set my phone down, I exhaled deeply, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Closure. Not because he had apologized, he hadn't, and I didn't need him to. Not because he had finally admitted he was wrong, he never would. Closure wasn't something he could give me, it was something I had taken for myself. I had spent too long letting other people define my worth, letting them decide what I deserved, what I should put up with. That part of my life was over. For the first time in a long time, I was free. Months passed, and life moved on. At first, I expected to feel some kind of regret, some lingering sadness over the people I had cut out of my life, but that feeling never came. Instead, I felt lighter, like I had finally let go of a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for another lie to unravel. I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night replaying conversations in my head, trying to figure out where I had gone wrong. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. Chloe tried to reach out a few times. At first, it was defensive, trying to justify why she had done what she did. She said she had only been looking out for me, that she hadn't wanted to ruin my happiness, that she had made a mistake but didn't deserve to be punished for it. I ignored those messages. Then they turned into apologies. She said she missed me, that she hated how things had ended, that she wished she had done things differently. But I knew her too well. Chloe didn't miss me. She missed the way things used to be, when she could manipulate a situation and still come out looking good. She missed having me around as someone she could control, someone who would always forgive her no matter what. She had made her choice. And so had I. Ethan was different. He didn't try to justify anything. When he finally reached out, months after everything had happened, he simply said that he was sorry, that he had been a coward, that he had let me down, and he knew he could never undo what he had done. It was the closest thing to real honesty I had ever gotten from him, but it didn't change anything. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt, but I also wasn't interested in rebuilding a relationship that had been built on so many lies. Some things don't get to be fixed, some things just end. Jake, on the other hand, disappeared completely. After I had blocked him, he hadn't tried to reach out again. Maybe he finally realized there was no way to spin the situation in his favor. Maybe he had found someone new to lie to, someone else to make feel special while he sneaked around behind their back. The thought didn't bother me. He wasn't my problem anymore. He never would be again. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't about destroying the people who had hurt me. That had been satisfying, sure. Watching their lives fall apart the way mine had felt like justice. But true revenge was this: moving on, becoming someone they no longer had access to. I had spent too much time defining myself by my relationships with other people. Jake's girlfriend, Chloe's sister, Ethan's little sister. None of that mattered anymore. I was just Lauren. And for the first time, that was enough.